missions. The mission of Interfaith Partners of South Carolina is to bring together people of diverse religious, spiritual, and secular paths throughout our state to cultivate a more harmonious community. For several years, we have sponsored a month-long series of opportunities for individuals to experience the rich and varied religious and spiritual pluralism of South Carolina. Our governor has proclaimed January as Interfaith Harmony Month, and IPSC has published a calendar of events across the state, from the upstate to the coast, most of which this year are occurring virtually, providing a unique opportunity for us to join our spiritual brethren in locales that we ordinarily might not be able to visit. The complete listing of interfaith events is located online on the IPSC website at Interfaith Partners of South Carolina, that's all one word, and that's SC, not spelled out, Interfaith Partners of SC.org, under the events link. IPSC also has a presence on Facebook, which you can locate by searching for Interfaith Partners of SC. This month's events can also provide a wonderful way to introduce children to other religions, so parents are encouraged to take them on a journey of discovery and understanding. I hope you will take advantage of this incredible opportunity and choose a few events in which to participate while representing the Unitarian Universalist community and learning more about the incredible religious diversity of South Carolina. And it is a really, really rich opportunity. There's, if you print out that list, it's about 5 pages. So surely you can find at least 1 or 2 events to explore. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. And we are going to have a link to that website. I know I was scrolling through it kind of quickly, but we're going to have a link to that website so that you can access those calendar of events. Some of the links for the events are there. Some of them have emails where you can request a link, but we invite you to take advantage of the fact that it's all done virtually this year, with a chance for you to participate in so many in the safety of your own home. So thank you, Cheryl's, for all the work that you do. And we really appreciate the chance to be a part of Interfaith Harmony Month, and know that we are fully supportive of the great work of the Interfaith Partners of South Carolina. Thank you so much. So as we think about our approach to interfaith harmony here at the UUCC, I am inviting us to think about this new year with new ears, and to think about celebrating interfaith harmony by thinking about how we listen, which is so much in line with the concept of harmony. Unfortunately, Fyodor Dostoevsky wrote a book entitled The Idiot. Otherwise, someone probably would have captured that title in our modern world today and written a novel, or maybe even a biography, and we won't name any names. But Dostoevsky's book, The Idiot, follows Prince Mishkin, who is a good person, in the words of Dostoevsky, who is trying to see if the conflicts and relationships and challenges in the world around him can turn Prince Mishkin into a not so good person. But that is the challenge that Dostoevsky takes on in this book, in a book that he admits was written in a hurry, so he doesn't think it's his best work. And of course, some critics of literary theory, one of my professors in literature actually believed it was his best work. So who knows? But there is a line in The Idiot from Dostoevsky that is powerful. It is a bold statement followed by a question. And the bold statement followed by the question is what I would like to focus on today. The bold statement is, beauty will save the world. So think about that for just a second, as we have just come out of a century that just about everybody is really glad that it's over. not a century, a year, maybe a century too, but a year of 2020 of conflict, of pandemic, of racial divide and tension, of global unrest, of economic crisis. This has been a year that we have really been glad to see it go and end, and turn our attention to 2021, hopeful that our world can be transformed, our culture can be transformed. So think about that bold statement from Dostoevsky: beauty will save the world. And it's followed by a question then in the novel. And the question is, well, what is the beauty that will save the world? And that's the question that we have to ask ourselves. What is the beauty that will save the world? In the late 1990s, Jack Dorsey was a college student who transferred from the University of Missouri to NYU. And while moving into the big city of New York, he was exposed to a system of technology that tracked ambulances and taxis and offered real live updates of their locations and their activities. And he thought, as a college student then, how interesting that would be if everyone could do that. If, thinking about feeling overwhelmed in the big city of New York, Dorsey thought, I wish I could keep up with my friends and know what they were doing. What if they could access the same system and give updates of their locations and their activities, and then anybody interested could follow their feeds? And of course, the platform wasn't built at that time. Texting was still a decade away from being widespread, believe it or not. This is the pre-texting era. So there was no platform for communicating in that way other than what the city was doing for ambulances and taxis. But not so many years later, after Dorsey had left PayPal and was thinking about starting a new business, a think tank came together. And from that memory of being at NYU, Twitter was born. Twitter became a platform for communicating, starting out with friends doing exactly what Dorsey said, updating. Here's where I am. If I'm at a park, here's what I'm doing, and here's what I'm experiencing, as a way of keeping up. Back then, text messages, SMS messages, were limited to 140 characters. And so Dorsey was living into that limit. And so Twitter was born with the ability to communicate where you are in 140 characters or less. Can you imagine if we tried to implement that at the UUCC? You can come and light a candle of community, but you only have 140 characters or less. We wouldn't be able to do it. Stephen, you can preach a sermon and provide a meditation for us, but you have to do it in 140 characters or less. And all of a sudden, I see the board's eyes lighting up as a way to write something new into my job description. But this platform for communicating also began to be used to update news as it happens. So people that were in real life situations around the world would communicate before news channels could communicate. Here is live in the moment what's happening outside a suicide bomb, outside a riot, outside some kind of event in nature, a hurricane, an earthquake. It became a platform for people in the experience to say, here is what's going on. And of course, Twitter has become a place where people bring their dogma to the screen and type in 140 characters or less what they believe about any kind of issue that is facing us in our time. It also became a platform for protests, for people to share what they didn't believe in and to speak out against anything that they thought was an unjust thing in our culture. And of course, more recently, we've had a president that attempts to conduct domestic and international policy on Twitter and in 140 characters or less. Of course, now it's 280 or less, to attempting to change the world and do the job of the president. What's happened in the meantime is we've become really good at communicating short spurts of information about who we are and what's going on and what we believe, speaking our truth and our experience in those small lines of electronic chat that we put out there. We become less skilled in the art of listening. We often talk at each other, preparing what to say next and thinking about what I am going to offer in a response before we even hear the message that is given to us. How many have been guilty of watching those three little dots when you're texting? You know, those three little dots, you know what that means? That someone that you're talking to is negotiating a response to you. And so you're looking at those three little dots. And how often, while we watch those three little dots, have we somehow circumvented their response and typed the response faster than they can get it back to us? We are constantly thinking about what we are going to say. And certainly there's a lot of work that's been done around finding our voice and being able to speak up. And for those who are oppressed, to be able to be heard and to give a voice, to not be silent. And I think all of that work is great in balance with what we now need to nurture is the art of listening. This is my opinion. This is what I believe. This is what's important to me. This is my truth. And honestly, all of that is irrelevant without relationship. My first year in chaplaincy, I was working in Atlanta at a hospital, and I was called to a room. A woman called, and her husband was facing a life-threatening procedure and trying to decide if his quality of life was worth doing the procedure or if she should just allow for a natural death. An intense conversation, and she wanted emotional support and spiritual support to be able to talk about that out loud. So I showed up into the room. We met each other and talked and caught up on the information. And then she began to share the pain and the dilemma of what she was going through, the love for her husband, but also trying to figure out the grief and the challenges that were ahead of her. What I was doing while she was sharing was I was thinking about all that I learned and all that I'd read about grief, about end of life. I was thinking about what's the words of comfort and help that I can give that would be most helpful to her in this moment. My mind was wandering and formulating exactly what I thought she needed to hear. And she did something that really has revolutionized my life. She stopped and she said, "Chaplain Robinson, I really don't think you've actually heard a word that I've said." And you know what? She was right. And I had to admit that. And I told her exactly what I just said to you, that I've been trying to formulate a response. And she said, "How are you ever going to offer me anything if you don't know what I've said? How can you offer any kind of comfort or direction if you haven't actually heard the words, and even beyond the words, the experiences of what I've said?" I think about that every time I sit down in a conversation with someone at the UUCC that has reached out to me for care. And my mind begins to think about what can I say? What can I offer in response? I remember her saying, "Don't forget to listen. Don't forget to pause your brain for just a moment on the side of formulating a response and use the energy in your brain and in your heart and in your soul to listen to what is being shared, to feel empathetically what is being shared." Anytime I sit down in a conflict of a situation, I am constantly calling myself to that center of, remember, I don't ever want someone to interrupt me again and say, "Hey, I don't think you've heard a word that I've said." As we move into this new year, we have a chance to practice with new ears, to practice the art of active listening, where we actually hear each other and we let empathy build relationship, which leads to understanding of each other. where we let curiosity be the cure for our defensiveness. And we rebuild a society of engagement where we find truth and meaning in the conversation of diverse people and voices, not in our own individual journeys. Paul Simon's vision of people talking without speaking, people hearing without listening, a song that he wrote when he was a teenager, remembering when he would walk into his bathroom as a young child, turn off the lights, and sing so that his voice could be heard by himself in a way that wasn't distracting with anything that he saw. Interfaith Harmony Month here in South Carolina is a great platform to begin this new year practicing our engaged and active and empathetic listening. It is a month of events of hearing the perspective, beliefs, and practices of those who are different than us, listening and learning, valuing and finding connection, and building relationship. It is an opportunity for us to practice the art of listening and knowing full well that if we do that with our new ears in this new year, we can rebuild a society of respect and tolerance. Like a choir of humanity, we can create harmony that is the theme of this month. So I believe that this is the answer to Dostoevsky's question. What is the beauty that will save the world? Listening, engaging. The beautiful art of engaged listening, valuing someone enough to actually hear them as they bring a different opinion or perspective, listening to the interdependent web of existence around us and hearing the changes we need to make from the planet itself to sustain life and save our planet. Being seen and heard and known in relationship is the beauty that will save the world. We are proud at the UUCC to join in partnership with the Interfaith Partners of South Carolina to engage listening and learning from each other, our neighbors, trusting that this is indeed the beauty that will save our world. Richard is going to invite us into a song.